Today I'm going to be having a look at some MDF terrain made by TTCombat. Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be looking at this. It's the Sector 3 Delta Complex from TTCombat. It's one of those towers connected by gantries kind of MDF kits. Really, I think these are designed with Necromunda in mind, but I'm going to be using it for Stargrave. Hopefully works quite well. It seems to have some good pieces of cover there, some nice elevation, some ladders, and some nice bits to fall from. So the set costs £26. It's cut on 3mm MDF, and when you've made it, you'll have 3 little silos, 4 kind of medium towers that have 2 platforms on them. There's a bunch of walkways. You get, I think, 10 little walkways and 3 medium walkways. There's also 5 kind of larger platforms. And then on top of that, you get a bunch of barriers, like for hiding behind. I think there's 28 barriers and some ladders. There's 2 large ladders and 3 small ladders. And then there's a bunch of little clips to clip it all together. All in all, the kit went together relatively easily. There wasn't any instructions in the kit, but you do get instructions on the TTCombat website. What I would say about those is they're very good at showing you exactly where things go, but not necessarily quite as good at showing you exactly the best order to put them together. So it's well worth kind of dry fitting the pieces before you commit to gluing them. They do recommend using PVA to glue them together. I used Yoo-Hoo. I quite like it because I know it's strong and it's kind of adjustable and it dries fast. So I went for Yoo-Hoo over PVA. Hopefully that doesn't prove to be a mistake when it comes to painting. We'll see how that works out. All in all, I think it took the best part of a day to put this together. I think it's mainly because of the number of pieces, but also because I spent a lot of time with my bit of sandpaper sanding down all the edges. There are little burrs on the edges of the MDF which you have to sand down to create a clean edge, but I also kind of beveled a lot of the edges on the pieces themselves just to give them a bit of a more natural look rather than that hard right angle that the laser cutting process makes. So it took me a bit longer. If you don't do that extra sanding, it'll probably be a lot faster for you. But once you've got your bits made, you can start playing around with it. This is it set up as advertised. What I would say about this setup is it's really impressive. It's big. It takes up a big chunk of your board. This is sitting on a 2x2 board here it's on just now. So you can see it takes up a big chunk of your games board. One downside of that is that it's a little bit hard to get your models under. If you're going with this configuration, it's a little bit like tight underneath for moving models in and out for such a big footprint that it covers. Another one thing I would say about this is that it would really benefit from being properly glued together in some places, especially on the upper platforms. They tend to they're only held on by the clips on one edge, so it means that gravity does a thing, and then so they kind of sag a little bit here. But I think if we just glued those in place, it'd be fine. So there's kind of a trade-off with stability and flexibility, because I mean this is a really modular set. Like that's one of the reasons I picked up was because of the circular towers. With the circular towers, it allows you to position the walkways at any angle, and of course the walkways have a half circle kind of cut out on one end, so you're not stuck with right angles or hexagon shapes. You can just go with any shape you want, which I thought was really cool. It's quite a good design. Another cool thing was how the silos and towers kind of stack. On the bottom of the tower there's a circle which is the perfect size for the circle that is on the top of the silos. Now that circle does 2 things. It hides some of the joins, holds the silo together, but also acts as a plug in the bottom of the piece above it, which holds them together really snugly. It might be a little bit too snug. I've actually sanded these down a little bit because I see me painting and texturing them a little bit. I still want them to be able to stack. So you might want to be thinking ahead. There's a couple of things like that where you might want to think ahead when you're building it. Like the insides of the towers, Actually pre-sprayed those before I glued them together because I thought it'd be a bit tricky getting in there and painting it once they were made. So there's a couple of pieces that benefited from being pre-painted before I glued them together. The MDF did seem to take the paint pretty well. I used black spray primer to start with, and then gave it a quick coat of some sort of artist, just a cheap artist acrylic you get from kind of hobby shops. And it took it really well, and you can see that's been a coat of spray paint with 2 coats of acrylic and then a bunch of other acrylic sort of sponged on to create a kind of a textured or weathered look, and it still retains those laser etched lines. It's what I was interested to find out, because I'd seen a few videos where they had used airbrushes or spray cans on those etched pieces, and I wasn't really sure whether or not using a normal brush and paint on was going to obscure them, but actually surprisingly doesn't seem to obscure them much at all. They must be cut quite deep in. So yeah, I was actually surprised that painting over it didn't really obscure it. I think you'd have to paint over it pretty heavily to obscure those lines. For me, I think it represents pretty good value for money. At £26, considering the size of the kit and the number of components, you can't really complain at £26. It fits together really well. The making it did take some time, but I enjoyed making it. I think if you enjoy making models, you'll enjoy making this kit. Another thing is the individual parts, once they're made, are actually strong. The towers and the silos, and obviously the individual walkways and things that are just single pieces of MDF, they're really quite robust. But I would say the best thing about it is the modularity, the way that it can be built in any configuration that you want, especially with those round towers that allow for your walkways to be placed 360 degrees around the actual towers themselves. So much flexibility, and just it's a lot of fun playing with it and making different setups. My only minor criticisms are that the instructions aren't maybe as clear as they could be, especially when it comes to the sequence that you put certain objects together. Definitely needs a bit of playing about with to get it right. And then another thing, maybe that some of the parts are a bit wobbly. Well, I hope you found that useful. If you did, you're more than welcome to subscribe. I'm going to be picking up some more terrain in the next few weeks, so maybe some more terrain reviews. Never know. But until then, never say die, say dices, and cheerio.